Hi Scrappers, welcome to 2020. Today is January 1st, 2020, and we hope that many of you are watching this. Maybe your eyes are a little foggy from a crazy night last night. Maybe some of you are watching this from your smartphones as you're out scrapping right now. With the first day here of 2020, what we wanted to do was give you a little forecast of what we think is coming for the first 3 months of 2020. Now, the last 3 months of 2019, we saw the steel prices increasing for about 8 to 9 weeks. We did see a bit of a pullback coming. That is mostly because of the amount of material that was sold to the mills and the export markets. It's also tough at the end of any year when the holidays are there to really get a good grip on where the markets are going, because a lot of people will pull back their prices knowing that they're going to be closed for multiple days, mills are going to be closed for multiple days, and it will become a little harder to move some of their materials. With the Phase 1 deal going into effect between the United States and the Chinese, we're hoping that some of the tariff rollbacks continue to kick in, as we've seen some of the tariffs that were supposed to be implemented postponed. On top of that, we saw some of the tariffs that were in effect rolled back, with some of them being cut in half. Now comes the part that we're going to watch in 2020. Not just the election that's going to be happening, but where these markets are going to go and how the deal is going to shape up between the United States and the Chinese, and where these metal tariffs throughout the aluminum and steel industry are really going to change and morph going into the rest of the year. We expect the first 3 months of this year really to be a learning curve. We don't know what's going to be happening. There's going to be new political things coming out, new market news. OPEC has talked about pulling back on their production of oil. That, of course, will affect all types of markets. After we saw the stock market hit all-time record highs at the end of 2019, we see some of a pullback coming, with so many people looking at these markets overall and trying to figure out where they're going to go. Now, with a very positive jobs report that we saw for the month of November, we saw that really catapult some of the copper prices 10 to 12 cents a pound, in some places 15 to 20 cents a pound on different grades of material. While we did see a bit of a pullback at the end of 2019, which isn't shocking, overall we've seen the market really remaining at a relatively high point, considering the rest of 2019 was relatively low. We saw the markets end at about a 7-month high, where they hadn't been since May of 2019. We hope that these copper prices continue their upward trend, but a stable market is a good market, because that means you know that when you have a bucket, a week or two isn't going to make a big deal. So when you go to sell it, you're really able to capitalize at the prices that you've already been comfortable with. One of our goals going into 2020 was to be able to create a more clear and transparent market. That's why we're making changes to our website, to be able to allow people to post more prices quicker and easier without doing all types of social logins. We'll be monitoring these prices, we'll be sharing them, we'll be coming up with averages to give you a more clear picture on what's going on across the entire United States and Canada. Now, we look at these prices, we look at them, we try to create trend charts and figure out where they might be going. But with so many political tensions coming in, it's really difficult to predict going much further than a month out. So here's our prediction going into the first 3 months of 2020. The nickel market has remained relatively low. With the low market after topping out in August of 2019, we expect the stainless market to remain in the 20 to 30 cent per pound range for 304 stainless steel. Brass, of course, is dependent on copper and zinc and other alloys that go into it, but with copper remaining relatively strong, and as long as no crazy deals happen between the US and the Chinese, we expect the copper market to also remain at a relatively high level, meaning that the brass market will as well. To end 2019, we saw the yellow brass prices between $1.10 and $1.30 per pound. Now, of course, as some of these prices have changed over the last year or two, we've seen a lot of scrap yards tightening up their operations and making sure that you're separating your scrap better than ever. And that's why we continue to produce so many videos. As changes happen, we try to push those changes to you so you know what's going on. In the copper side of things, we hope that these markets remain steady, which we expect they will in 2019, outside of some type of crazy thing. But with the increases that we saw at the end of 2019, a lot of mills, like we talked about a few weeks ago, were really flooded with orders and were booked out 8, 9, 10 weeks in advance. So we will not be surprised to see a little bit of a copper pullback, but we're watching it, hoping to learn and see where it moves going forward. On the steel and the iron side of things, we saw some of the heavier grades of steel finally making a push and jumping up $30 to $50 per ton across the board. While we saw a small market pullback at the end of 2019, that wasn't surprising going into the holiday season. Also going into an area where 6 to 8 weeks, we saw a lot of scrap hitting the market that had otherwise been sidelined due to lower prices. For the rest of the quarter, we see gold hovering at a relatively level spot in the $1,450 to $1,500 range. Platinum, palladium, and rhodium are expected to make a bit of a pullback, 3 to 7% in pricing, which of course will affect your catalytic converter markets. With the catalytic converters really being the talk of 2019, with the market jumping as much as it did, we saw such an inflow going into the entire catalytic converter and precious metal world. We won't be surprised to see that market pull back temporarily. Long term though, those three metals, those base precious metals, are really going to be needed for emissions to continue to remain at high standards, to keep the air more clean and the cars pumping out higher fuel and gas efficiency. So those materials will continue to be needed, but we'll make sure to update you with our weekly reports on where we see some of those prices moving forward. Now the aluminum prices, those are really going to be dependent on where the tariff and trade battles go, but we're going to continue to watch those as we've seen those prices remain in the low teens, 20s, and 30s. A few items like clean aluminum rims and bare 6063 and EC wire has remained in the 40-cent range, but overall it still has been relatively low. So we wish that you and yours had a very safe and happy new year. We welcome you to 2020. We look forward to growing with you, learning from you, and hoping to share more market news with you as the weeks, the months, and the years continue. This is Tom from the iScrap app, and from the team here, we'd like to wish you a safe, healthy, and very prosperous 2020. And until next week, scrappers, where we'll be back live, I'll scrap you later.